And you're welcome to our extra special segment. Is where we'd like to always look into one of the most pressing issues affecting Nigerian households. And today, that's what we're doing. This time is the soaring cost of cooking. Now, according to a recent report by the National Bureau of Statistics, the price of a 5 kg cylinder of cooking gas has surged to an eye-watering 6,915 naira, with the Northeast seeing the highest cost. For many families around already stretched thin by economic challenges, the simple act of preparing a meal has become a financial burden, forcing changes not just in how we cook, but also in what we eat. Now, this crisis isn't just about numbers. It's also about reshaping Nigerian family diets, their traditions, and even livelihoods. Now, families are turning to alternatives like charcoal and firewood, which come with their own set of environmental and health risks as well. The ripple effect extends beyond the kitchen to businesses and the overall economy. And so today, we will explore the profound ways these rising costs are redefining the Nigerian culinary landscape.
Yes, indeed. To help us unpack this, we're joined by Glory Etim, Senior Analyst at SBM Intelligence. Glory brings a wealth of expertise here in economics and economic trends and also their social-political implications. Glory, you're welcome. Thank you very much for joining us this morning.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Good. So let's get started by asking first of what the key factors are that really drive the price or the rise in price of cooking gas across Nigeria, and why the Northeast especially is experiencing the highest cost.
Okay, so there are a number of factors that are driving the cost of cooking gas across the country. And, you know, over the years, we've had rising demand for cooking gas as the government has been encouraging Nigerians to move to safer means of cooking. And in this context, cooking gas. But what we've experienced recently has been logistical problems in terms of, you know, the transporting cooking gas from locations, as into locations, especially to rural locations. So, you know, because of the state of some of the Nigerian routes, and this is overlapped by the high cost of fuel and also the insecurity that we are facing. You mentioned that, okay, the report by the NBAs mentioned that the cost of cooking gas is more in the north, and it is as a result of these infrastructural issues, the fact that apart from the poor conditions of some of the roads in these rural areas, there's also the problem of the rising cost of petrol. And overlapping this is the insecurity problem in the north. So that is especially in the northeast. So that is the reason why there's a disproportional cost for the people in the northeast. And you understand that as a business person, you're looking at the risk of transporting, and transporting is expensive. And then if you overlay this with the risk of security, so you are asking, you know, when you start having conversations of whether your tankers would deliver and issues like that. So these whole issues have increased the cost of cooking gas.
Right.
Over the year.
Glory, I must ask about what this now means for the average Nigerian household. Now, when I say average, oftentimes we think about the middle class, but when I mean average, I mean those who are in the lower middle class, those who do not have a car, who has to use public transport. With that research, it makes you want to put into perspective how they are managing, because we know that what is supposed to be the cheapest mode of cooking, and that's kerosene, is also higher than the other, you know, fuel and diesel as well. You know, so it begs to ask the question: how are they shifting their behavior when it comes to cooking and just sort of cheaper alternatives for them?
So before I come to how they are coping or how they are managing, I would like to say this, that the upper middle class, as we knew before, is actually shrinking. So what we have as the middle class is more like the lower middle class. And, if we just oppose these with the understanding that the average Nigerian, earns about 60 to 70,000, and these are people who have households, though we are able to see the magnitude of the problem.
Yeah,
So what
Glory,
people
for a
are
second.
doing-
Glory, 1 second. I'm wondering how a person who earns 70,000, and that is actually minimum wage now. If a person earns 70,000 naira and what do you call it, a cylinder of gas now, I don't know how much you bought it for the last time, but I bought it at 15,000 naira. So that is, what's the percentage off of my salary now? And if I have a family of, let's just say 5, how long is that going to last me? And we boil water every morning before I go out for work because, it's cold. How are the average families actually coping? Yeah, I don't know if you have any research to back that from SBM.
Yes, we do. So, like I said earlier, what people are doing is that they are returning to, using charcoal and those kind of energy sources that are not clean. And we know the implication of these to the economy, to women's health, and also to climate change. So that is what households are doing. They are, and there's been inventions and innovations around these to support the use of coal. There are some stove now that they are coming up to, because of the demand. Because of the demand now, that households are trying to,
They're looking
get,
for alternatives.
households are finding it more difficult to get gas, so they are returning to alternative energy, especially coal, which is not very clean, and like I said earlier, there are implications for the economy and all of that.
Glory, it reminds me of way back in school, in my boarding school in Ogun State, Shagamu. All the Fedi girls come out. But what was interesting at that time was that we also had a shift, right? And this, I can't say the year, because a lady never tells her age. Unlike Mazino, who's ready to tell us, if you give him a chance, he will tell you, I'm old, I just look young, look at my
Drop
hair.
of a hat.
But I mean, Glory, when you take it back, right, I remember they had to make a shift because it became more expensive to feed the children at the time. And what they did was they did a shift from gas to firewood. Firewood became expensive, and we started to use sawdust.
No, wow.
That was a very interesting time. And that was a school where, all kinds of class of people were there, middle, higher middle, and even very prominent, figures had their daughters in that school as well. But we had to make that shift, to sawdust. And it was nicely packaged, and it was efficient and good. I mean, the smoke and the soot reduced for a while. But also, it's very interesting to see. Now, that is just a school. Do you get what I mean? Like, it's just a boarding school stuck in the middle of Victoria Ramos. Exactly. You said?
I would say that, there's no way that we can package, sawdust and coal and all of those things. It does not, erase the fact that that is a dirty source of cooking. And, we are looking at these in the eyes of the urban dwellers. If we look at these in the eyes of the rural dwellers who have to go into the bush, you understand, who have to maybe the forest, or who are cutting down trees to be able to do these, we understand how, the magnitude of this problem.
Right.
Beyond, when we had our interviews earlier this month, people in the rural areas, they actually go into the bushes to cut trees and all of that, so that they are able to have supply of energy to cook. And if you ask how this is affecting them, over the years we've been talking about in reducing the time that women spend in the kitchen and all of that. So having to go into the bush to fetch firewood just increases all of these. And apart from that, for those in the urban areas, the risk of the hazard, the hazard from this. You spoke about sawdust, for instance. it further complicates, the health issues.
Yeah.
And when we talk about the health infrastructure in Nigeria, it's also a problem. So it feels as though Nigerians are in a setup. It feels like Nigerians are in a setup.
Right.
And if we take this back and see that how much Nigerians generally spend for food, over 70% of their income. And this, if we compare this to places like the US and the UK, where is only about 11% that is spent, it shows how much Nigerians have been pushed to the bricks.
Gloria, I have a question regarding, the economy of food making. I'm talking about perhaps fast foods and the rest. In any economy, when we start to see these downturns, we notice that a certain streak or level of food manufacturers go out of fashion. Fast foods, for instance, have become astronomically expensive. So what is the future for these establishments in Nigeria? Are we looking at a case where, because the last time I went to buy ice cream, half of their refrigerators were not in use because they don't have that much demand. So are these businesses going to go out of business?
I have to add one more of my experience as well, right? So sometimes I can be a night crawler, right? And so in one of those nights, Lagos nights, there's a place that you normally go to that it looks like a dining hall, like a proper festival, right? And that Saturday night, like everywhere is wild. They split that hall into two, okay? And even as they split it into two, some of the tables were empty.
Yeah.
Do you get what I mean? And it can only make you wonder, how those establishments are still able to stay up, and where are all the ballers of Lagos?
Here. So what gives what hope for these establishments?
Okay, I would say that if nothing happens, we'll see more establishments dropping out, from the market and closing up. And we have seen this happen in the pharmaceutical industry, where there are a number of, the farmers that we had dropping off and closing their markets in Nigeria. So, yeah. So we are going to see this happen with fast food. And, over the years, we've seen how the fast food brands have been adjusting, adding eggs. Previously, it was just chicken and all of that, but we've seen them evolving, adding egg and in some places, adding more to their protein sources just to encourage more people to buy. But what happens when the economy breaks down or when there's inflation like we have in Nigeria is that, discretionary spending reduces. So people start to ask questions about what is very important, and they stick to that. So we are going to see a number of these businesses dropping out, from closing up.
So after your research, do you have any solutions for the government in terms of policies that could help at least families to be able to cook easier and cheaper, or at least keep businesses that this is what they do running?
Yeah, so over the last 4 years, I would say that one of the things we've not failed to do has been to profess solutions across the board in terms of, rising food costs. We have proposed to the government to increase their, to increase their investment, especially in mechanized agriculture. We have also proposed to the government to, take off the bans. Let people import food. We've not yet reached production levels. In terms of cooking gas, one of the core factors that's driving it up is transportation. And we've seen how the removal of fuel subsidy has really impacted Nigerians. So if the government is able to subsidize in some way, and when I say subsidize, I don't mean subsidizing every Nigerian, subsidizing the Nigerians who need it most. And this is always difficult because of the problems with identity management that we have. So I think that is where the government should focus on, I know there have
Right.
been debates about the list of the most poor,
Right.
but, subsidies and all of that would help in
Gloria,
the midterm.
in the last 6 months, I will tell you that they have, with the National Social Register Scheme, that's the conditional cash transfer scheme, I think, and that's what it's called. And there's also the bag of rice that was sent to it in trucks to the poorest of the poor in different local government areas. But I do have I do have a theory, and my theory is, I got two theories. The first one is kind of like a joke. I also believe that in the 90s, one of the reasons why we've seen a popular food outlets, very food chain that we know that was scattered across Nigeria, it started from the early 80s, and they are very synonymous for their meat pie. The reason why it dropped in the quality and taste was simply because of what's happening again. And so I say this to say that our socioeconomic system is like a cycle, it's cyclical. You know what I mean? Like it goes, we're always back to the same junction every single time. It doesn't end. It's like clockwork. We're back here. Mazudo can share an experience. I can share an experience. Gloria can share an experience. Matthew, our producer, same with Mava and Collins. We can go back and forth sharing the same experience in our lives of when and how this has happened. And so there's also, in this circle that I'm painting for you, or cycle, there's also, conditional cash period, palliatives and subsidized issue, but we still are back here every single time. When does it end? What could be a lasting solution?
So, like you said, we cannot totally take subsidies out of the system. The problem of the Nigerian subsidies that we subsidize everybody, and no government in the world is able to subsidize all its citizens. You mentioned the cash, conditional cash transfer to the poorest of the poorest. There has been debate on, who makes that list and where that list was compiled over the last few years in Nigeria. And that tells you that, there's sort of issues with who should receive what benefit also. So, when we talk about subsidies, and this happens in everywhere in the world, it should not be for everybody. It should be for a particular group of people, and not just the poorest of them. Mm-hmm. It should be for, there should be a safety net for different categories of people, defined by their income and defined by their living standard. And this is something that the government has failed to do. That is why subsidies are most of the time given to everybody. And because subsidies are given to everybody, we come back to this cycle of let's remove the subsidy. We're not supposed to remove subsidies for everybody. Subsidies is supposed to be, targeted. So that is the problem that we have with subsidies.
Well, Glory, we only just witnessed the UNGA, was it UNGA 35, I think? And then just only last week, COP29, issues regarding the environment and environment sustainability goals were discussed at these two forums. It makes you ask whether we have that in our consciousness as Nigeria or the Nigerian government, where we are seeing people resorting to coal, charcoal, or sawdust, which aren't exactly healthy. They are hazardous. They are also fire hazards as well. And it doesn't seem like we're driving toward these environmental goals that we set out to for before. So what concerns for Nigeria from the international view do we have?
Okay, so in the hierarchy of needs, food, for instance, is paramount. It's hard to discuss issues of preserving the environment with people who are trying to feed. So what is the alternative that they have? So if I go to the villages and I start a campaign and tell the rural women, please, let us stop using, firewood, let us stop using coal, because these are the problems, these are the hazards. And then they ask me, what is the alternative that they have? What answers do I give them? So because of this, because there's no good alternative at this point, the conversation about preserving the environment is secondary to us. Is not, is secondary to us. Even as, this is a global, even as this is a global concern, we're discussing climate change, we're discussing how these affect everybody. But there is little that the average Nigerian can do as these affect their very survival.
Very interesting, Judy, because what she just said just made me remember that local parlance that says "waiting consign agbiru" with overload. So I get it.
And to piggyback off Mazino, right? If the agbiru was the average Nigerian, how then would be the overload will be the small businesses as well? I mean, if we're clamoring for the government to subsidize or, provide palliatives to make life easier, then what would it be for the businesses? And by business, I mean tourism, because tourism seems to be struggling, okay? Let's put this into context. From 2020, the COVID-19 pandemic, they were hit heavy. Right after they tried to recover, and now we're in an economic downturn, and it's been purported as reforms. But we know that who's going to suffer the most is still tourists, the tourism sector, and local tourism suffers the most, So how then can they survive in this time? What can they do? When you throw out your studies, did you notice any trend in them trying to manage, with the economic downturn, and what were they?
Okay, so when we talk about tourism, I want to mention it that it is not part of the, it's not like the food industry, for instance, it's not part of the FCMGs. So it's more of a higher level need than the others. So we would see, industries that are, more towards the lifestyle. You understand? Those ones would suffer more in this economy. So because, like I said earlier, there's, discretionary spending. That is what, those kind of expenditures would suffer. People are no longer going to spend on non-essential items or activities like that, such as entertainment, vacations and hobbies. Those kind of things would take second place. And as a result of that, those that industry and those companies around that industry are bound to suffer.
Well, I want to say thank you very much, Gloria Etim, for giving us your expert opinion regarding the cost of cooking in Nigeria, because everything is actually really tough.
Oh yes.
And thank you very much for joining us today on Breakfast Extra.
Gloria Etim there, she's a senior analyst there for SBM Intelligence, has given us a bit of insight on what the cost of cooking in Nigeria economy looks like today.